I've been growing carrots for years and years. In fact, it's one of the very first things I can remember harvesting from my grandparents' garden. And they're always so fun to harvest because it's always a surprise. You never know what you're going to get. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves talking about harvest. I get tons of questions from viewers on how to grow carrots. And so today we're going to be tackling some of those top questions. And by the end of this video, you should know how to begin harvesting some beautiful carrots from your own garden. So before we get started, just a few of the basics on growing carrots. Number one, carrots do not like to be transplanted. So you want to plant them in the garden where they're going to grow. They also will grow in full sun or part shade, minimum 4 hours of direct sunlight. But the more sunlight you give them, the faster the harvest is going to be. Carrots are a cool weather crop, meaning they grow in pretty much anything but the summertime, depending on where you live. You want to get them out as soon as your last frost date is. And if you want to find out your last frost date, I'm going to put a link below. You type in your zip code, it'll tell you when your last frost of the winter should be. And you can plant right after that. You also want to get them planted in time before your first frost date comes in the winter. Generally, carrots, and you can look on your package, it's about 60 to 80 days from sowing to harvest. So find your last frost date, count back 60 to 80 days, and plant them then. And carrots can take a little bit of frost, so even if you go either way over that line, you'll probably still be okay. So now to the questions. One of the biggest questions I get is, why do my carrots come out misshapen? And there's a couple of reasons that might happen. Carrots are a taproot, which means they grow one root straight down. They have some feeder roots coming off of it, as we've all seen when you dig a carrot up. But that main root is a taproot, and it just wants to grow straight down. But if it hits something like a little rock, it's going to either fork and go around both sides of that rock, or just twist and go around it. So you could end up with a lot of crazy, sometimes obscene shapes. So you want to make sure that your soil is light, fluffy, airy, and it has a deep root run, at least 12 inches for most carrots. You can do this by adding a lot of organic matter, sand, but you want to make sure that that's going to grow straight down without having anything get in its way and without being pressured by really tight, compact soil. Now, if that's pretty much impossible where you're growing your carrots, there's a couple of ways around it. Number one, grow short, stubby carrots. And you can look through any seed catalog, look even at the pictures, and you're going to see either a couple inches long, or they have some that are kind of like almost round. Those would be your best bet in a heavy soil with maybe lots of rocks. Another option would be to grow them in containers. Carrots grow great in containers filled with nice airy potting soil, again at least 12 inches deep. Another reason your carrots might be misshapen is if you recently added manure to your garden bed. Manure within the last 6 to 12 months is going to cause carrots to fork. So you want to wait at least 6 to 12 months after you put manure down to plant your carrots. The next problem a lot of people have is germination. Now, carrots take up to 2 weeks to germinate. They're pretty slow, and for impatient gardeners like me, after 1 week it seems like 2 weeks. So you wonder what's going on. Another problem, to make matters worse, is that carrots need to be consistently moist. They're seeds. But when you consider that you hardly want to cover carrot seeds, depending on the weather, your soil, the top of the soil, could dry out within a couple of hours. So here's a great tip. First of all, water the ground first before you sow your seeds. That way you don't have to water again after the seeds are there and wash them away. Then sow your seeds sparingly. You don't want to crowd them. You can sow them in a 4 to 6 inch wide band. Then you want to press them down with a piece of wood. Just press them down firmly so they make contact with the moist soil. And then we're going to leave the wood here. Yep, You heard right. We're going to leave this wood here to hold the moisture in the soil. It's also going to, if you're sowing this maybe at the end of summer, it's going to keep the seeds cool. And if you're sowing this right after your frost date, last frost date, it's going to protect against any kind of crazy frost that surprise you, but they'll be safe under this board. And we're going to leave this board here for maybe a week and a half. And then after that, every day, you're going to check under the board to see if they've sprouted. Once they've sprouted, you're going to just maybe put another piece of wood under each end, about an inch off of the ground. That way, it gives them a little more time being protected from drying out, from birds, from the elements, to push that taproot and start getting that established, so that once you take it off, they're ready to go. And then once they're about an inch tall, so once they're touching the bottom of this board, take the board away, you're done with it, and now they can continue to grow successfully. So the next question I get a lot is, my carrots just don't grow very big. If you've followed all the advice that we've already given, then the main reason is probably overcrowding. It's really easy to over-sow because carrot seeds are so tiny. And so what happens is they end up coming up, all of them, too close together, and they're going to crowd each other for space, and they're not going to reach maturity. The best thing then to do is, once your carrots are about 2 inches tall, start thinning them. Carrots need about an inch of space to grow. If you imagine when you're thinning out your seedlings, imagine each one of those carrots being the size of a carrot, and thin anything around there. And you want to thin out the weakest ones around that section. So pick one that's the strongest and then give it an inch space. Trim out all the weakest ones around that. Find the next strongest one within about an inch or so. Trim off the ones around that. I'm saying trim because that's what I like to do. You can pluck the seedlings, but what I find is, even at 2 inches tall, carrots have a lot going on under the ground. If you sowed them too thick, which you most likely did, all those roots are intertwining. And so when you pull one up, it could disturb the ones you actually want to keep. So if you take just a tiny pair of scissors and cut them right off at ground level rather than plucking them, you're going to get better results. Now, I know it's hard to do sometimes. It literally goes against a gardener's DNA to not be nurturing and to pull out and kill things. But it has to be done in order to get a decent harvest. Now, if you still have a problem with it, there is another option. What you can do is take carrot seeds and radish seeds, pour them both in your hand and kind of mix them up. Sow them just as you would normally. But what happens is that those radishes are going to mature a lot sooner than the carrots. And so as you thin out the radishes, or harvest the radishes, you're basically leaving that space around the carrots for the carrots to then mature. Make sure to always keep the soil moist around your carrots until harvest. Drying out the soil causes the carrots to be wimpy, brittle, not juicy and crunchy how you want a carrot to be. It also decreases the sweetness of the carrot. Also, keep the area free of weeds. Weeds are going to compete with the carrots for nutrients and water. Now, if you have really light, airy soil or you're growing in a container, harvesting the carrots is easy. Look for the carrots, you kind of move the greens away, you're going to see the very top of the carrot right there at soil level. And what you're looking for is basically for it to be the size of a carrot. And if it is, it's time to pull it. So give it a pull and a twist at the same time, and it should come right out. If you've got heavier soil, then you might want to water heavily before you harvest, and that's going to help them come out a lot easier. Harvesting carrots is great to do with kids because it's kind of like a little treasure hunt. Like I said, I still remember harvesting carrots at my grandparents' house, and that was probably 40 years ago. One quick tip after harvesting is to immediately take off the tops. Take off all the green, because if you leave those on there, the root is still going to try to support those greens. And so it's going to take moisture out of the carrot and put it into the greens. A Comment below and let me know what you thought of this, or if you have any tips or questions, be glad to entertain those. We're going to have a lot more of these complete growing guides coming over the next few weeks and months, so definitely make sure that you're subscribed, that you've hit the bell icon so you can get notified when all of our videos come out. I'll see you guys next time.